Welcome to Buddha's Path to Freedom, the podcast where we explore the ancient wisdom of the Jataka tales and uncover their timeless relevance for our modern lives. I'm your host, Anna.
And I'm David. It's great to be with you all. In these stories, we encounter the Buddha in his previous lives, learning the very lessons that would lead him to enlightenment.
Exactly. A Jataka tale has three main parts: the story of the present, Pakkapanavatu, which takes place during the Buddha's time; the story of the past, Atitavatu, which is the actual Jataka or birth story itself; and finally, the connection, Samodana, where the Buddha reveals the links between the characters in the past and present stories.
Today's story is a powerful one. It's about potential, perception, and the incredible compassion of a great teacher. It's known as the Chulasettini Jataka, but it begins with a monk named Chulapanthaka.
So, David, let's set the scene. We are in ancient India during the time of the Buddha. There is a monk, an arahant, meaning a fully enlightened being, named Chulapanthaka, but his journey to get there was anything but easy. He once struggled to memorize a single line of scripture.
His family story is as unique as he is. His mother was the daughter of a very wealthy merchant. In a story that echoes others from that time, she fell in love with a servant in her own household, and they eloped, leaving her life of luxury behind for a simple hut in a faraway village.
When she became pregnant, she longed to return to her parents' home for the birth. Her husband was terrified, certain his father-in-law would have him killed. She was so determined that one day she just left. Her husband chased after her and found her on the main road, already in labor.
And right there, on the road, their first son was born. They named him Panthaka, which means path or road. Since the baby had arrived, they felt there was no reason to continue, so they returned to their hut.
The same thing happened with their second child. She again tried to return to her parents, taking her first son with her, and once again gave birth on the road. To tell the boys apart, they named the older one Mahapanthaka, Great Panthaka, and the younger one Chulapanthaka, Small Panthaka.
As the boys grew, they noticed a void in their lives. Other children had grandparents, aunts, and uncles. They had no one. They pleaded with their mother, "Mother, don't we have any relatives?"
Heartbroken, she finally told them the truth, that their grandfather was a great merchant in the city of Rajagaha. The boys insisted on meeting him. Their mother eventually convinced her husband, saying, quote, "After seeing our two beautiful sons, what could they do to us?" He was still too afraid to face his father-in-law, but he agreed to take them to the city and leave them there.
So the mother brought her sons to the gate of her father's mansion. She sent a message inside. The reply that came back was cold. The grandfather said, "In the long cycle of rebirths, one has countless sons and daughters. You dishonored us, and we don't want to see you. But we will raise the children." He sent her money and told her to go live her own life.
Imagine the pain. She had to accept the money, send her sons into the mansion she grew up in, and walk away forever.
The boys, however, grew up in comfort. The elder, Mahapanthaka, was thoughtful. He would go with his grandfather to hear the Buddha's sermons and became convinced of the urgency of seeking liberation. With his grandfather's blessing, he ordained as a monk.
And he was a brilliant student. Mahapanthaka studied diligently, and in a short time he became an arahant, a fully enlightened being. His first thought was for his brother. He thought, "I must give this same opportunity, this same freedom from suffering, to Chulapanthaka."
He got permission, and Chulapanthaka was ordained. But this is where the story takes a turn. Chulapanthaka couldn't learn. He would try to memorize a single verse, and by the time he got to the second line, he'd have forgotten the first. For 4 months he struggled, unable to retain anything.
The texts say this was due to past karma. In a previous life, during the time of the Kassapa Buddha, Chulapanthaka had been a brilliant, quick-witted monk. He had openly ridiculed another monk who struggled with memorization, shaming him so much that the other monk gave up his studies. Now the karmic result had ripened.
His own brother, Mahapanthaka, the one who wanted to help him, lost patience. He said harshly, "You can't even memorize one verse in 4 months. How can you possibly succeed in this life? There's no point. Go back to the lay life." He even excluded Chulapanthaka from an almsgiving invitation from the famous physician Jivaka, calling him useless.
Chulapanthaka was devastated. He overheard this and felt utterly hopeless. He didn't want to leave the monastic life, but he felt he couldn't stay. The next morning, he stood at the monastery gate, weeping, unable to go forward and unable to go back.
And it is at this lowest moment that he feels a compassionate hand on his head. It was the Buddha.
The Buddha's approach was the complete opposite of his brother's. He didn't scold or dismiss him. He said, "Chulapanthaka, you ordained for me, not for your brother. Why didn't you come to me? Don't be afraid. Stay."
The Buddha then gave him a task, but it wasn't another verse to memorize. He handed Chulapanthaka a perfectly clean white piece of cloth. He told him to sit in the sun, face east, and rub the cloth while repeating the words, "Abandon impurity. Abandon impurity."
While the other monks went for the alms meal, Chulapanthaka sat and rubbed the cloth. As he sweated in the sun, the pure white cloth began to grow grimy, stained, and dirty. And at that moment, a deep insight arose in him. He thought, this cloth was pristine. Now, because of contact with this impure body, it has become defiled. Things truly are impermanent. They arise and they pass away.
This was the key. This insight connected to a wisdom he had cultivated in a past life. As this realization dawned, the Buddha, though miles away at Jivaka's house, projected his voice to Chulapanthaka. He told him that the dirt on the cloth was minor, but the true defilements were the lust, hatred, and delusion within the mind. As the Buddha spoke the verses on cleansing these mental stains, Chulapanthaka broke through. He became an arahant, gaining not only enlightenment but also mastery of the Dharma and its analytical knowledges. His memory block was completely gone.
The climax is incredible. At the meal, the Buddha tells Jivaka there is still a monk at the monastery. Mahapanthaka insists there isn't. The Buddha sends a servant back, who finds not one monk, but thousands, all looking identical, all created by Chulapanthaka's new psychic powers.
The servant is baffled. He runs back. The Buddha tells him, go back and say, the teacher calls for Chulapanthaka. Then, grab the hand of the first one who speaks. The servant does this, and the moment he touches the real Chulapanthaka, all the duplicates vanish. Chulapanthaka then delivered the closing sermon, speaking with a voice as clear and flowing as a river.
Later, the monks were buzzing with astonishment. They couldn't believe that the brother who had dismissed him so cruelly failed to see his potential, while the Buddha unlocked it with a simple piece of cloth. The Buddha then said, "Monks, in this life, Chulapanthaka gained this power because of me. But in a past life, he also became a great multi-millionaire by following my advice. And that," he explained, "was the Jataka story."
So now we travel back in time, to the city of Benares. The Buddha, in a past life, was a wise merchant known as Chulasettini. One day, on his way to the palace, he saw a dead mouse on the side of the road.
Most people would just see garbage. But the Bodhisatta, Chulasettini, saw potential. He remarked to those around him, "For a person with wisdom, even that dead mouse is enough to start a business and build a fortune."
A poor young man overheard this. He thought, Chulasettini is a famously wise man. He wouldn't say something for no reason. So he picked up the dead mouse.
And here begins a brilliant chain of microtransactions. He sells the mouse for a couple of coins to a tavern owner to feed their cat. With those coins, he buys some molasses and a pot of water. He goes to where flower gatherers are working and offers them a refreshing drink.
In return for his kindness, they each give him a handful of flowers. He sells the flowers. The next day he does it again, and they give him even more. He reinvests, scales up, and soon has a small amount of capital.
He then leverages an opportunity. After a storm, the royal park is littered with fallen branches. He makes a deal with the royal gardener. "I'll clean up the whole park for free if I can keep the wood." The gardener agrees. The young man then gathers some children, offers them molasses water, and has them pile up all the wood at the park gate.
Who needs firewood? The royal potter. The young man sells the entire pile for a good sum, and now he has a real business. He sets up a large water station near the city gate and provides water to 500 grass cutters. He doesn't ask for money. He builds a relationship. They become his friends and his network.
And this is where his intelligence shines. He uses his network for information. A friend tells him a horse trader is coming to town with 500 horses. He goes to his grass cutter friends and says, "Today I need a favor. Each of you give me one bundle of grass and don't sell your own grass until mine is sold."
He corners the market. The horse trader arrives and can only buy grass from him for a huge profit. A few days later, another contact tells him a big ship has arrived at the port. He uses a similar tactic, hiring a carriage and creating the impression of a massive buyer to get exclusive rights to the ship's cargo.
By controlling the supply, he sells the goods to 100 other merchants, making an enormous fortune. He now has hundreds of thousands of coins.
And what's the first thing he does? He goes back to the merchant, Chulasetti, who started it all. He offers him a huge portion of his wealth in gratitude. Chulasetti is so impressed with his integrity and intelligence that he not only accepts him as a protege, but also gives him his own daughter in marriage and makes him the heir to all his wealth.
The Buddha finished the tale and revealed the identities. At that time, he said, the young man who built a fortune from a dead mouse was none other than Chulapanthaka, and the wise merchant, Chulasetti, was myself. Wow, what a story. The connection is so clear. In both lifetimes, Chulapanthaka's potential was completely overlooked by almost everyone.
Absolutely. In one life, he's a poor man nobody notices. In the other, he's a monk, dismissed as useless. But in both cases, the Bodhisatta, the Buddha, sees the hidden capacity. He doesn't give him a handout. He gives him a single, powerful insight.
Let's break down the core lessons here. The first, and most obvious, is the dead mouse principle. It's the idea that value is not inherent in the object, but in the perception of the person looking at it. Where others see trash, a wise person sees an opportunity.
This is so relevant today. What's a dead mouse in our modern life? It could be leftover vegetable scraps from dinner that seem destined for the trash, but could become the base for a rich, flavorful broth. It could be a wobbly chair left on the curb that, with a little glue and paint, becomes a beautiful piece of furniture. It starts with seeing the potential where others see a dead end.
The second major theme is the right method for the right person. Mahapanthaka used a one-size-fits-all approach. Memorize the verses. When Chulapanthaka couldn't, he was judged a failure. The Buddha, however, diagnosed the problem on a much deeper level. He knew Chulapanthaka's block was karmic, and that his path to insight wasn't intellectual memorization, but practical, kinesthetic observation.
That's a profound lesson in mentorship and leadership. If someone on your team or in your family is struggling, do you label them useless like Mahapanthaka? Or do you try to find their white cloth? Do you find the unique key that unlocks their potential? A good leader, a good teacher, a good parent doesn't just deliver the material. They tailor the delivery to the student.
This also touches on karma and transformation. Chulapanthaka wasn't stupid. He was experiencing the consequence of a past action, mocking someone else's struggle. This story teaches us that karma isn't a permanent sentence. It's a condition that can be overcome with the right effort and the right guidance. His suffering became the very catalyst for his enlightenment once the Buddha intervened.
And that intervention was pure compassion over judgment. Mahapanthaka judged from a place of spiritual pride, perhaps. I became an arahant, why can't he? The Buddha approached from a place of boundless compassion, meeting Chulapanthaka at his lowest point and lifting him up without an ounce of judgment.
Finally, the metaphor of the white cloth is just stunning. Abandon impurity. He wasn't just cleaning a cloth. He was performing a meditation on the nature of his own mind. The external dirt was a reflection of the internal defilements of greed, hatred, and delusion. As he saw the cloth become soiled, he understood how contact with the world and our internal states soils the pristine nature of the mind. The practice was to clean the mind itself.
And in that simple, repetitive act, he found the focus and insight that 4 months of complex verses couldn't give him. He bypassed the blocked intellectual channel and went straight to direct, experiential wisdom.
So for us, when we feel stuck, when we feel like Chulapanthaka banging our head against a wall, maybe the answer isn't to try harder with the same failed method. Maybe it's to find our white cloth, a simple, practical, mindful act that can quiet the noise and allow a deeper insight to emerge. Maybe it's not trying to read another book, but taking a quiet walk and just noticing how the leaves change.
From a dead mouse to a multimillionaire. From a useless monk to a powerful arahant. This Jataka tale is a beautiful reminder that potential is everywhere. Compassion is the key that unlocks it, and no beginning is too humble for a magnificent ending.
That's all the time we have for today on Buddha's Path to Freedom. Join us next time as we explore another story of wisdom from the life of the Buddha.
Thank you for listening. May you find the hidden potential in the dead mice of your own life.